So my talk's on testing with Cypress. This is some bits and bobs about me, and most people know me. I run two user groups, the .NET York and .NET one, but generally I'm just a software dev and I write C# and JavaScript mostly. So Cypress. So you're probably thinking, oh God, another testing framework, another end-to-end testing framework, because we've got so many already. We've got Selenium, which most people are probably about 80–90% of people are using already. We've got Puppeteer, Playwright, Nightwatch, Test Cafe, and WebDriver IDO. And I think there's a few more other ones around as well. So why have we got another one? So these are the stats for them ones what I just said. Cypress is doing pretty well, as people can see on this chart. So this one. So it's got some good amount of stars on GitHub. There's lots of issues, so it is very active and people are raising bugs against things and asking questions and stuff. It is a decent version now. It has been going about 8 years, so pretty similar to the rest of the frameworks out there as well, which have been going for some time as well. And yeah, it's quite comparable to the rest of them, really. And the last downloads for the last 5 years for all them testing frameworks are pretty much on a gradual incline. So from the 5 years trends, they're all just going up. But if you look at the last year trends, you can see like Cypress is one of the top ones that have been downloaded, just next to Puppeteer and Selenium as well. So it's a lot of people are investing their time and their business into kind of using Cypress. So it might be time for you to get on board as well. So they kind of blurb on their website as a tool for reliably testing anything that runs in the web browser. So this is a bit different from like what people are used to with Selenium, because you have to write it all in JavaScript and it integrates directly into the browser. So you don't have an isolated process running Selenium or Cypress in this case. So these are the few things why I think Cypress is probably better than other tools out there. So there's a way to time travel backwards through your actual test runs, which allows you to debug things a lot easier. So you can see how many times things are hit, how many spies are hit, kind of what routes have been hit and all sorts of other stuff like that. You can also just press F12 in the browser and just debug things like you would just debug your normal code. It automatically waits for elements in the DOM as well. So if things aren't there, it'll wait for, I think it's a maximum of 4 seconds before bailing out. You can do things like spice stubs and change the clocks. So if there's anything in there where you need to kind of modify and tweak while your test runs are running, you can just inject that in straight into the browser. You can control the network traffic, so you can slow things down. You can also replace requests and mock things out as well. So if you don't want to go out to your real APIs, you can just mock them all. It also does screenshotting and videos. So it does all your test runs and videos, records them all, so you can play them all back. And also it's totally cross-browser as well, without any effort. So that's a lot of things to kind of display on slides. So I thought the easiest way to do that is just to show you a bit of code, really. So to start off with, I've got this calculator app, which is all written in React. So I just stole this off somebody's GitHub. It's lovely. So you can do 8 times 8 and you get 64. You can plus 2 to it and get 66. So a nice simple app there. So what I've got here is like a spec file, which is what Cypress is going to be using. And we can do things like everything is off this cy command variable. And we can do cy.visit, so that goes and visits this address. So this is very similar if you've ever used any of the other testing frameworks. I can also do a cy.get and pass in a CSS selector. And then I also have some operations on there as well. So I have things like click, contains, all sorts of other things what I can do. So this test is just going to add 2 numbers together and click equals and then get the expected result and say it should be 5. So I'm just going to spin that up. I've just created a nice simple npm script in here, which is just cypress.open, but you can just type cypress.open just so I can remember what to type. So if you spin that up, it should open. There we go. We get this like, they call it an IDE. But I wouldn't say an integrated development environment, but it just lists all the tests what you've got. So I've got some sample tests what they give you to start off with, and then I've got my calculator spec as well. So as I said, it's total agnostic of which browser you use. So you can select if you want to use Chrome, Edge, Electron, or Firefox. So I can just go select Chrome. I can click my calculate spec, and that'll open the browser up and to start running the tests. So I'll run through all them scenarios what I just created, and clicking all the buttons and everything else, and gets my output of 5. So it says that's run fine. So if we want to go run that in Firefox, we can click Firefox, pretty much to click the same thing, and we've got Firefox, and it'll just run through the same scenario as well. And there we go. So one of the cool things, as I said, is you can go back in time with inside of the Cypress tests. So if I want to see what happened on this step here, I can just click it, and we're already back to the snapshot of this DOM, this time. So before we press the plus sign, we've got 2 in the value here. We go to the next step after you press the plus, we'll see the 2 still. And then once we go past that and press the equals, we'll end up with the 3. No, sorry. When we press 3, we'll end up with 3 in there. And then just before the equals, before we get the result, we see 5 end up in the kind of the results. So that means we can go back in time, pretty much drill down any kind of bit of the scenario, what we want to go see, and debug our tests. So if this ever failed, it's pretty easy to kind of figure out what's going wrong. So even if we had loads and loads of tests, we should just comment this out for the time being, where we just keep plussing 3 to it maybe, because we're crazy. And then we go back to the runner. One thing you can keep this running as well and actually rebuild the spec files as well, so you don't actually need to close it. Just a bit. Click happy. So you can click our spec file, and it'll pretty much just run through all them extra pluses and go a bit crazy. So if it fell over, like in one of these, we can pretty much just go back to that snapshot and see what happened at that time and see the state of the actual page, which is pretty cool, to be fair. One of the other cool things is it can intercept traffic as well. So I'm just going to show one of their examples. So it's this network request one. So this network request one actually goes off and calls one of the APIs. But what it does is it intercepts that API before it gets called and then replaces it with its own data. So if we expand that test out here, we can see a bunch of routes, what is kind of mocking out. So we've got a get, post, and put on comments. And it says it's called it each one time. And it tells you if it's been stubbed out or not, and it can receive the data, which is pretty cool. So even if we open our developer tools, let me just open up Chrome because I'm not used to Firefox. It's a while since I actually used Firefox properly. Oh, that's actually the wrong test one I'm clicking. That's the one I wanted. So we can open up our normal network tab, and we can see just the normal request what it actually does to actually run the tests. See if it's going to work this time. So we'll be able to see our comments one here. So we can see it's actually called comments directly in the browser. So you can see the actual responses and requests, what actual browser is using with the normal dev tools, as well as the actual routes on here. So we could go down and inspect what has been sent back and everything else like that, which is quite useful when debugging things. So that's probably all I want to show there. Most of the things which you can do actually with the actual browser are pretty similar to kind of Selenium. So I'm not really going to cover kind of every single bit of scenario you can test. One of the cool things what you can do is create these commands with Cypress as well. So this is a way to encapsulate like bits of like the same logic and things. So I've changed this around to be press button 2 + 3 and then the equal sign. And you have a bunch of commands and you can chain the commands up together. So you can do click whatever and kind of keep chaining the commands down. So I'll create an extra command down here. So press button for this application. It'll press a certain button what I passed in and click it, or find it and then click it. So if we just go run that one now, it should run exactly the same as the one before. So this is the second test. So it runs exactly the same as before, but you can encapsulate things in these things called commands, what they have. And just to show off the time waiting stuff as well, I've nicely hacked in a sleep in the middle of my my application here. So every time I press the equals now, it's going to wait 3 seconds to actually calculate my results. It's just nice to hack in outside the calculate function. And that should rebuild this app. And we can just go through that out with our normal calculator. So if we refresh this, we do 8 times 8 and then press equals. Although a 3 second delay until it shows you 64, which is great. But our test is just doing 2 plus 3 and then equals. So in theory, good old Selenium, the old days would be, it'd hang for a bit and then just crash. But if we just run our spec file now, we'll see it's doing the 2 plus 3, and then it's got 5 straight away. So you saw the delay between them two things, and it's happily I'll run that and wait for the actual result. Which is quite cool. Anyway, back to my slides. The last bit. So one of the good bonusy features I think are for Cypress is the dashboard. So this is a way to kind of, you can push all your kind of test results up to their own service. So it's actually a paid for service, but if you're under less than 3 members in your team, you get this for free. But to be fair, it's fairly cheap anyway. And this is their public one, what you can play around with. So we can just, where'd that go? Just open it up and just disappeared on my machine. So we can just open that up. And we can just have a browse around. So somebody's running some tests now, which is quite cool. But we can drill into their test runs. We can go to a certain failed test. So intercept and blow method correctly. We can click into there. We can go watch a video to see where it failed. So this will give you the full test run, show you where it failed. So if it wants to play, there you go. So it's fairly fast. Yeah, so it gives you the same results, but the only problem is you can't debug it as if you're in the browser, you've just got the video. But it does give you the whole environment, some artifacts, so you get all the logs as well, so you can just download the logs and see where it failed as well. And you have all the stuff about the branches, how many times it failed, if it's flaky, the browser and all that kind of stuff as well, which is really useful, I find. But that's pretty much it. That's a quick run through of Cypress. So yeah, the Cypress.io website has loads of information about it. There's quite a lot of videos on there. And also the docs are really good. The kind of developer kind of docs of all the API are really useful. And it has loads of examples on there. But that's it. Thanks for listening. If anybody got any questions, feel free to unmute or ask in the chat.